Hello everyone. Hope you are all doing well. Today we are going to talk about the barriers to effective communication. Talking to each other is a huge part of what makes our day-to-day life tick. Whether it's shooting the breeze with friends, fixing things with your significant other, ordering a pizza, snagging that cool pair of sneakers online, venting on Twitter, catching up over the phone, or sending a quick email, communication is at the heart of it all. It's how we make connections, sort things out, share our 2 cents, get help, strike deals, and even land jobs. But let's be real, sometimes getting our messages across just as we mean it isn't as easy as it sounds. There are a bunch of sneaky hurdles that can trip us up, making our words do somersaults and twists before they reach the other person, and not always landing right. Think about it like this. Ever played that game of telephone where you whisper a message to the person next to you and they pass it on? By the time it gets back to you, it turns into something completely different. That's kind of what happens when these communication barriers get in the way. For starters, there is filtering. It's like when you tell a story but leave out the parts that might make you look bad. Or language barriers. Ever tried explaining your favorite meme to your grandma? Yeah, it doesn't always go smoothly. Silence can be another roadblock. Ever been so miffed that you just give the silent treatment? It says something, but maybe not what you really need to communicate. Then there is the fear of speaking up, known as communication apprehension. It's like when you got a great idea in a meeting, but the thought of speaking up makes your palms sweaty. Selective perception. It's another tricky one. It's like when you're so sure your sports team is the best, but you only notice the stats that back that up and ignore the rest. Information overload is real as well. Ever had your inbox explode or your notifications go off like fireworks? Yeah. Trying to sift through that can mean important stuff gets missed. And emotions, boy, do they have a say. Ever send a text in the heat of the moment that you regret later? Been there, done that. Gender differences can also play a role. Like when guys and girls misinterpret what the other is really saying because of these Mars Venus vibes. And let's not forget political correctness. Walking on eggshells to avoid stepping on toes can make it tough to get your point across. Another biggie is when people throw around big words or jargons that sound like it's from another planet. Like when a doctor rattles off a diagnosis in a medical speak and you're just nodding along, gotcha, but really you're thinking, I need a translator. Navigating through all these barriers to keep our communication clear and effective is a bit like being a detective in a mystery novel, piecing together clues to make sure nothing gets lost in translation. It's about tuning into the other person, picking up on the vibe, and making sure the message we send is the message that is received. Loud and clear. After all, getting it right means deeper connections, smoother sailing, and less, what I meant was moments. So, among the barriers, the first one would be physical barriers. So, let's get into it. Physical barriers in communication are like those little gremlins that pop up when you least expect them, making it tough to get your message across. Imagine you are working in a huge office complex and your team is scattered across different buildings or even different cities. This isn't just inconvenient, it's like trying to shout across a canyon. You might see each other, but good luck being heard. And then there is the gear we use. Ever been in the middle of a crucial call when your ancient computer decides it's a good time to freeze? Or maybe you have wrestled with software that's so updated. Or maybe you have wrestled with software that's so outdated, you're pretty sure it belongs in the museum. These technical hiccups aren't just annoying, they are communication blockades. Short-staffed. Oh, it's a classic. Picture this. You're in a diner and there is only one server on the floor. Orders pile up, folks get impatient, and messages like requests for extra ketchup get lost in the chaos. In the workplace, not having enough hands on deck means details slip through the cracks and misunderstandings become the norm. Noise is another fun one. Ever tried to chat with a friend at a concert? You're shouting, they're nodding, and neither of you have any idea what's being said. In the office, it could be anything from construction next door to a colleague's loud ringtone disrupting the flow of info, anything. Message distortion is like a game of telephone. You start with let's meet at noon, and by the time it reaches the next person, you're somehow meeting next Tuesday at the moon. It's all about how we interpret things. And without clear communication, messages get twisted faster than a pretzel. The layout of our workspace can also throw a wrench in the works. Ever had an office so far from the conference room you needed a map and a compass to find it? Or maybe the boss's door is always shut, turning their office into a no-go zone. These physical divides make popping in to clarify something or catch up way harder than it needs to be. Next is technical difficulties. They are a bane of our existence. Internet outages, software crashes, and the spinning wheel of doom can turn a simple task into an epic saga. It's like trying to run a marathon with your shoelaces tied together, frustrating and counterproductive. Don't get me started on time zones and distances. Your teammate in Tokyo is just starting their day as you're winding down in New York. It's like living in parallel universes where finding a common time to chat requires a PhD in time travel. Information overload is real too. Imagine your brain as an email inbox. At some point, it gets so full that everything starts to blur together. When we are bombarded with too much information, our brains hit the pause button and things start to slip through the cracks. And finally, the environment. Ever try to have a serious conversation while a thunderstorm is raging outside? Or maybe you're shivering in the office because of the AC is set to Arctic? Extreme weather doesn't just affect our comfort, it can throw off our communication game too. So there you have it, physical barriers to communication, explained with a few laughs and nods to the struggles we all face, I suppose. Whether it's battling outdated tech or shouting over the din of a noisy room, these challenges remind us that getting our messages across isn't always as straightforward as we would think. Second one would be semantic barriers. Semantic barriers are all about the mix-ups and confusions that happen when words don't land quite as we expect them to, thanks to their meanings being as varied as the flavors of ice cream at your favorite shop. First off, we have got denotative barriers. Think of these as the dictionary definition mix-ups. It's like when you say comment to someone who has been scrolling through Facebook since it was just a college network and they're thinking about typing a message under a post. But if you're chatting with someone who has never dived into the social media pool, comment might just mean a remark made during a conversation. See the gap? The same word, but different words. Then there is the connotative barriers. These are a bit sneakier because they are all about the vibes or feelings a word brings up, beyond its direct meaning. Take current for example. If you're a surfer, current might make you think of ocean currents. But if you're a tech geek, current might mean the latest update in your favorite gadget saga. Same word, different scenes. Now let's talk about homophones. These are the words that sound like twins, but are different totally in meaning and spelling. Picture this. You're texting about a market deal and you type, let's buy it. B-U-Y. But autocorrect hits you with let's buy it, let's B-Y it. And then to make matters worse, your friend thinks you're suddenly saying goodbye with a trendy let's buy it. B-Y-E here. One word, three ways, total confusion. Homonyms are up next. Imagine a word like bear. If you say it, I can't bear it. Are you talking about holding up under pressure, or is that actually a grizzly bear in your backyard? The word looks and sounds the same, but has multiple roles in our language play. Homographs are the chameleons of the word world. Take LEAD, for instance. You could be talking about taking charge in a project, so lead the way. Or you could be discussing the metal found lead in the paint. Same spelling, different pronunciation, and different meaning. See, differences in dialects are like the flavor twists in language. Your soda might be my pop, depending on where we are calling home. It's the same drink, but our regional word choice could because a brief huh. Bypassing is when words fly past each other without connecting. Imagine someone texts you, meet me ASAP. You might rush thinking ASAP means now, but maybe your friend's ASAP is more like sometime before dinner. And restroom. Well, in some places, that's a polite way of saying bathroom. But if you're somewhere that doesn't use the term, you might be looking for a place to rest. Lastly, individual linguistic ability is about how well we juggle words. Ever been lost in a sea of jargon at a new job? Or stumbled through an explanation that just didn't land? It's like trying to follow a recipe written in chef speak when all you know is microwave meals. So there you have it, semantic barriers in a nutshell, making our conversations a little more like navigating a fun house maze. The trick? Keep your sense of humor handy and never be afraid to ask, what do you mean by that? The third barrier is organizational barriers. Imagine you're part of a big company and you've got something important to say or do, but it feels like the entire structure of the place is working against you. That's what we are talking about when we mention organizational barriers. These are the sneaky little and sometimes big issues that can make communicating inside a company tougher than explaining why you like pineapple on pizza to a pizza purist. So first off, think about a time when you were trying to figure out who to talk to about an issue at work. But the company structure was as clear as mud. That's a system design default. Maybe there is no clear guide on who handles what, or perhaps the roles are as well defined as a blob of slime. It's like being at a family reunion and not knowing who is related to whom. So you accidentally spill your guts to your third cousin's ex instead of your sympathetic second cousin. And let's not even start on the tech systems that feel like they were designed by someone who is still living in the 90s. Or when there is so little guidance and training that you're pretty sure your job description was written in invisible ink. Now picture a boss who is the human equivalent of a rain cloud, always looming and never pleased. That's what a negative organizational climate feels like. It's when the higher ups are so down in the dumps or critical that everyone else feels like any new idea will get shot down faster than a fly at a barbecue. It's like trying to start a garden, but you're constantly told it will just attract bugs. Now, ever been in a situation where you're not even sure if you're supposed to talk about something at work? Like, is it cool to bring up that coffee machine is broken again? Or should you just keep quiet and suffer in silence? That's what happens when there is no clear communication policy. Without a rule book, or even just some guidelines, everyone is just winging it, leading to a lot of shrugged shoulders and unsent emails. Then there is the dreaded corporate ladder, which sometimes feels more like a corporate skyscraper. If you have got to get appeal from what feels like 15 different managers just to order more pens, you're dealing with excessive authority layers. So it's like trying to get a simple yes from your friends on where to eat, but every suggestion has to go through the group chat tribunal. By the time you get an answer or an approval, you're too hungry to care. So filtering is another classic move. It's like playing a game of telephone at work, where the message starts as, "We need more coffee in the break room." And by the time it gets to the top, it's, "Coffee breaks are too long and need to be cut." It's when people only share the good stuff, hoping to make themselves look better, but it ends up distorting the real picture. Lastly, we have got the human element, attitudinal barriers. Ever try to have a serious conversation while someone is scrolling through their phone, clearly not listening? That's the vibe. It's when personal issues like not getting along with a coworker or feeling undervalued turn into communication roadblocks. You're all set to collaborate, but the other person is still holding a grudge from the last team building exercise gone wrong. In essence, organizational barriers are like the weeds in the garden of communication. They can spring up from just about anywhere, turning what should be a smooth process into an obstacle course. But by recognizing them for what they are, we can start pulling those weeds and clear the path for better, clearer conversations at work. The fourth barrier that we all face are psychological barriers. Imagine these barriers are those little gremlins that mess with how we talk and listen to each other. They're sneaky because they come from our own minds and emotions. Let's break them down one by one, shall we? Fear of being judged. Ever had that moment when you're super nervous about sharing your ideas because you're scared people might not take it well? It's like wanting to suggest a movie to your friends but worrying they'll laugh it off. One cool trick to beat this fear is to practice talking about stuff you read in the newspaper or saw on TV in front of a mirror. It's like giving a mini TED talk to yourself. It sounds silly, but really helps build your confidence. Second one is making assumptions. And this one is tricky. It's when you say someone thinking the other person will totally get it, but they end up catching only half of it or none at all. Imagine explaining a meme to someone without showing it to them. You think they understand, but they are actually lost. It's a classic recipe for confusion. Now, the third one is mind in the clouds. Ever tried having a conversation with someone glued to their phone? It's frustrating. It's your head not in the game. You're likely to miss out on what is being said. And that's a surefire way to mess up communication. It's like trying to watch a movie and text at the same time. You're bound to miss the plot. The next one could be remembering stuff. Our brains are like sieves sometimes. We hear things and then poof, half of it disappears. Ever been told a bunch of things to grab from the grocery store without writing them down? Chances are you're coming back with only half of the stuff. Our memory just isn't perfect, and that can make information sharing a bit of a challenge. Trust issues. Communication flows smoothly when there is trust. Without it, we start reading too much into things, getting defensive, or just tuning out. Think of a time when you doubted a friend's advice because you were suspicious of their motives. It blocks the message they're trying to send. Seeing things differently. Perception is a funny thing. We all see the world through our own different lenses, shaped by our experiences and feelings. It's like watching a movie and arguing about the hero's choices with your friends. Everyone has their take, influenced by how they see things. Different perspectives. It's all about how we view the world. You might be all about saving the planet, while your buddy is more into economics. If you start talking about environmental policies without framing it in a way they care about, your message might as well be in Morse code. The connection just isn't there. Next is set in our ways. Our attitudes and opinions can be a major roadblock. They shape how we think and sometimes put up walls that block open communication. Ever tried convincing a die-hard fan of one music genre to try out something new? It's hard, it's tough because their mindset is already tuned to what they prefer. Then there are emotional roller coasters. So they play a massive role. Positive vibes like joy and love usually make for smooth conversations, but let those negative emotions in like anger or sadness, and suddenly it's like trying to have a heart to heart in the middle of a storm. The real message gets lost in the chaos. In short, navigating Communication is a bit like dodging potholes on a road trip. It's about being aware of these gremlins, practicing patience, and try to see things from the other person's point of view. With a bit of effort and understanding, we can all get a bit better at getting our messages across without letting these pesky, those psychological barriers trip us up. Now we move on to physiological barriers. Imagine you're trying to have a chat, but your body or brain is like, no, not today. This is all about those physiological barriers. Basically, the stuff with our health, how we see and hear, or even how our brains decide to remember or pay attention to things. Think about a time when you were super sick, maybe a nasty cold or flu. Your head felt like it was stuffed with cotton, and just the thought of talking or listening to someone felt like climbing a mountain. That's your body stepping in and saying, communication? How about we don't? It's a physiological barrier right there because your ill health is literally making it harder to engage in a conversation. Or you picture this. You are in a super noisy restaurant trying to catch up with a friend. They are telling you something very important, but all you can hear is the chatter around you, the clinking of glasses, and that one loud sound from the other side of the room. If you are someone whose hearing isn't exactly superhero level, or even if it's just the environment overwhelming your ears, you're hitting a physiological roadblock. You want to listen, but your ears are like, sorry, what was that? And then there is the whole deal with our eyesight. Ever tried reading a text message without glasses when you really need them? The words might as well be a secret code. Poor eyesight can make it tough to read non-verbal cues too. You know, like when someone's facial expression says they are joking, but you miss it because you are squinting from across the table trying to figure out if they are serious or not. Let's not forget our brains. Oh, the brain. It can be a best friend or a biggest challenge. Ever walked into a room and forgot why you were there? That's your memory deciding to take a little holiday. Now apply that to conversations. Maybe someone's name just slips your mind or you forget the crucial detail in a story. It happens to the best of us. Attention and perception are part of this mix too. Ever zoned out during a lecture or a meeting? You all must have. I have done it personally. 1 minute you are with the speaker and the next you are thinking about what to have for dinner. Your brain's attention just took a detour. So all of these things, getting sick, struggling to see or hear properly, or just having one of those days where your brain decides to go on a little vacation, are physiological barriers to communication. They're like the hurdles we didn't sign up to jump over, but they are there, reminding us that sometimes communicating smoothly takes a bit more effort. But hey, knowing about these hurdles is the first step to figuring out how to leap over them, or at least sidestep them gracefully. The fifth of the barriers is the social barriers. When we talk about what stops us from connecting with others, there is this huge elephant in the room called conformity. Imagine you are at a big family dinner and everyone is going on about how great a certain movie is. You really didn't like it, but you nod along because, hey, you don't want to be the odd one out. That's conformity for you. It's like peer pressure's older, more sophisticated cousin, making us tweak our true selves just so we fit in the better with the crowd. Now let's chat about some things that make communication even trickier. Age, for example. Picture trying to explain TikTok to your grandmother or grandpa, or vice versa. Her trying to get you into knitting. It's not always smooth sailing, right? Now, gender plays a big role too. Ever noticed how in some families men are expected to be strong, silent type, while women are seen as the caretakers, always ready to discuss and solve problems? This isn't just about stereotypes, it's about how these roles can lead to misunderstandings and missed connections. And then there is the big P, poverty. It's a massive hurdle. Imagine you're in a school and there is this trip everyone is excited about, but it costs money. And for some, That's a deal breaker. Suddenly, there is this invisible wall between those who can go and those who can't. It's not just about missing a trip, it's about feeling left out of the conversation, both literally and figuratively. Conflict is another biggie. Thinking about two neighbors arguing over a fence. It's not just about the fence, it's about their beliefs, their way of seeing the world. And when those views clash, it's like they are speaking different languages, even though they are using the same words. Last one would be racism. Sadly, it is still with us, creating divides that shouldn't exist. Imagine being overlooked for a job or a role in a school play, not because you're not talented or qualified, but because of the color of your skin. It's heartbreaking and infuriating, and it silences voices that need to be heard. So, what is the takeaway from all of this? Communication is complicated, and there are tons of things that can make it even harder. But understanding these barriers is the first step toward knocking them down. After all, at the end of the day, we are all just trying to connect, share our stories, and be understood. The last among the barriers would be the cultural barriers. Our culture is like backstage pass to how we think and act. It's the secret sauce that flavors our communication style. Imagine culture as the unwritten manual that guides us through the do's and don'ts of interacting with others. But here is the catch. When folks from different cultural backgrounds try to chat, it's not always smooth sailing. It's like trying to dance together without stepping on each other's toes. Tricky, but not impossible. Let's talk about the language first. It's the big kahuna of communication barriers. And we are not just talking about speaking French versus Mandarin. Even dialects within the same language can throw us for a loop. Picture this. You're an American visiting Scotland. Someone asks if you like biscuits. You're thinking cookies, right? But they're actually offering you what you know as crackers. It's a small difference, but it's enough to create a mini moment of confusion. You can think of many more examples like this. I'm sure you know. Now, on to cultural norms and values. Every culture has its own set of rules and beliefs, kind of like their own unique flavor. These differences can stem from all sorts of things, like what we consider true, what we believe in, and even how we judge right from wrong. For instance, the concept of personal space varies widely. In some cultures, standing close to someone is a sign of warmth and friendliness. In others, it's been seen as intrusive. So, if you're someone who likes their personal bubble, navigating a crowded market in a bustling city overseas might feel like a full contact sport. Stereotypes are another hurdle. Thanks to the media and societal chatter, we often have pre baked ideas about certain groups of people. Take the topic of transgender individuals. Perceptions and acceptance levels vary significantly across cultures, influenced by their traditional standards and media portrayals. These stereotypes can color our interactions before we even open our mouths to speak. Values and beliefs are the backbone of cultural identity, influencing everything from the holidays we celebrate to the foods we eat. But when these values clash, communication can get a bit thorny. Here is a classic example: wishing someone Merry Christmas. It's a friendly gesture, right? But if the person doesn't celebrate Christmas due to their religious beliefs or cultural background, your well intentioned wish might miss the mark. Stereotypical assumptions can lead to some awkward, if not outright offensive, misunderstandings too. It's like assuming everyone loves pizza. Sure, many do. Most people do, I should say. But there are always exceptions. These assumptions can make us stumble into foxpaw territory without even realizing it. So, what is the takeaway from all this? Communication is a dance that requires us to be in tune with our partner's steps. By being mindful of these cultural nuances, We can avoid stepping on toes and maybe even learn a few new dance moves along the way. It's all about embracing our differences and finding common ground in the rich tapestry of human culture. I hope you enjoyed all these learning about communication. Thank you.